Hello everyone, welcome to another GameMaker Studio 2 tutorial. I'm your host, Mario from TechnomancyStudios, and today we will be talking about scripts and how they work. So by the end of this video, you should be able to use scripts to some extent, and as you're using them, you will learn how to just use them more, I guess. So, let's talk about scripts for a bit. So what is a script? Well, if you've taken a gander at scripts before on the documents, you might know that they just hold code. So let me just give this a name, like, just keep it script 2. And you can say something like, well, instance start create, say depth x or 0 0, depth 999, and object thread object. And so if you were to, let's say, execute this script in the create event, you can execute it by just typing the name of the script, and make sure you always have these two thingies. So now for to like spread or to launch. Game capture, just turn that on. And it should create it at 0 0, another thread object at 0 0. Oh, well. Looks like it's time to give up, as it just gave me an error for some weird reason. Why? That doesn't make sense. Oh, I just realized something. If I could put that in here, then when a thread object is created, another thread object is going to be created, and then that thread object is going to create another thread object. So let's just change that to Bob. Bob's not going to be created multiple times. Yeah, it was trying to stop an infinite loop. I should have seen that. Kind of funny. Sadly, GameMaker sort of knows when there's going to be an infinite loop. Alright, so we see that we have, when it shows up here on OBS, because OBS is a little bit slow, I can just try to, yep, there we go. There's a Bob object over there in the corner. Very cool. So, what is a script? A script is pretty much a separate way of executing code, except the code cannot be executed by itself. It is just you could put up any kind of block of code there, and it could just be an extension of an object, for example. So let's say you could do this. Let's say all this here, I could just put that in the script, except for the variables. The variables you want to actually have them initialized first in the object, because it's a weird thing. It won't detect it. But you can have this in the script. So another way I would think about this is, if you also have touched programming before, you might know what a function is. If not, then let's go math terms, what a function is. So basically, a function is kind of like an equation. It's an equation. So let's say you have like 2x plus 3 equals y. So whatever you put into x, that final, you have an input, and then you got your return, your result. And scripts work pretty much the same. So, and in programming, there's functions. So there's a lot of different types of functions. For example, in C, there's integer functions. There's functions, there's void functions, which mean that they just don't really return anything. But usually those functions, whenever they have something in front of it, it's always like int float, that means they'll return an integer or a float, but like void doesn't. But because this is GameMaker, they simplify that process a lot, so you could just at any point return whatever you want. You don't have to tell it what kind of thing it's going to return. So it's all flexible. So what do I mean? So let's just make something simple. Let's just make this a simple. Let's rename this to add number. So here's how we're going to get started. So one thing about functions is that they have things called arguments, and arguments are pretty much variables you are input variables. So you're going to give these like inputs to the function, and it will take those, save them in the script for save them in the script for a bit, and then use them. So they can be very powerful. And one thing it is always nice to do is that you make variables and then you assign those variables to those arguments. So let's just show you an example. Var number equals argument 0, and I believe there could be an up to 16 arguments with GameMaker. I don't know. I don't think you're ever going to need 16 arguments at once. I never have encountered anything like that. I do encounter them with quite a bit of arguments. So let's just say, so now we got this input. How do we get something out of this? Well, when we return, we type in return. Return means to output back a number, a variable, any variable. So let's just do number plus 5. So now we're just going to return a number, the number that we put plus 5. So let's create a new variable here called test, and let's set that equal to add number. And in this, now you might be like, where do we put the input? In here, in these parentheses, we put the input, and we would put, let's put 5. Now there is a way so that if you want, because like if you notice here in this function, because this is also a function, this is like in a sense a script itself, but not really because you didn't make it, it's a built-in function. But you notice that it shows you the name of the function and all the arguments put in here. So it's literally just the same thing as a function here. But you might want to know how you do this, and that's a little bit more advanced. So there's a certain kind of, I don't use it a lot because it is quite a bit to put in the code, but I might put that in another video to show like how to do that. But as of now, it doesn't really matter. You could just always, Oh, another fun thing is, remember how I told you if you middle mouse click this, any function, you can see like in the manual, if you make a script, or as I usually prefer, a function, you can middle click it and it'll open it right next to the object, and you can see all that nice stuff there. So let's debug this, and I'm gonna raise this up a bit just so that we can see. Alright, and Fred should have a test, and it's 10. So we got 10. We returned 10. So this is really useful so that you can, you want to run something like, oh, check something, because here's the thing, scripts are very useful for if you just have a line of code that is just constantly, being copied around, and you want to save some space in your code. You just put that there, and it makes your code a lot cleaner. And all it does. And usually, the thing is, that I can't teach in this video, is that, how you make things more modular and using these codes and using this stuff is, that's what scripts for, making a very modular thing so that you don't just use it in one object, but you can use this thing in multiple objects. So for example, in an RPG you want to make text boxes, but how I would normally do them was every NPC would have its own way of drawing a text box, but instead this time now I'm like, no, I'll make a separate object that can just be called, but it has to call back to an object with a specific kind of alarm so that it can continue the thing with its process, if there is one. This is just like a one-time run, or it's still flexible that way. It might not make any sense to you, but it does to me, and it's something you'll just learn as you program. So what if we have multiple arguments? Well, I'm not going to put another one, because technically they're always there, but I think if you don't assign it, if you don't call it in the code, but you could just put a comma, 12, something like that. And they don't have to be numbers, they could be strings, they could be true or false, they could just be another object, an instance of an object. Maybe whatever that can be interpreted into GameMaker and used in a function. So another thing that we want to do is, let's say you want to do something like, get an object and change something about it. Let's create a Bob object and then say like, change its name. So let's just create a new script called change name. Right? So let's make a var called new name equals argument 0. And let's try to target a specific instance of Bob. Now, if you're not using the same project like as I'm doing, then you might kind of be a bit behind, but this you might not really. You could just watch this, but it's always best if you practice along with me. I know I might be using like the same stuff as I did from my previous video that you didn't watch, which is understandable because it's 50 minutes long. Just try to follow along. So let's actually do this. Okay, so let's just cut this. Let's make a new variable called Bob equals this, and then let's just put Bob in here. So put that little semicolon. Always put the semicolon at the end, even though like GameMaker doesn't care whether you do it or not. I feel like it just helps make sure minimize your errors. Because sometimes if you have like another line of code next to this, if you are someone who does that, which if you are, just don't do it because it just doesn't seem really that proper. It might interpret it as one long line of code and break the game. So, and also if you want to go to something like C, the C language, they always use semicolons at the end, and you should just do that, as a habit. So Bob, friend, okay. So now so we got new name, and let's do var target equals argument 1. Now you might be wondering, why does it start with 0 and 1? Well, in computer speak, it's, when you're counting, you always start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unlike how humans, where we just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0 is technically in the number in computers a number. So they count it as something. But there's no negative, because you can set something as 0, but you can't set something in the computer as -1. Now think about like binary, for example. You got if you're doing zeros and ones, and by default 0 is like the base of everything in binary, so it's just like the starting position. That's why it's like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe it's that way because that's just how it works. If you know anything about computers, that should make sense to you. So anyways, now I got 2 arguments here. So let's go back here and actually just remove this and just type in change name. And we're gonna say, we're gonna give, you know, Bob a new name, because Bob is kind of lame. Let's give him Jeff, right? And let's give it to our Bob, because our Bob is very special. So now we got like something here. We got a string as one argument and an instance as another. And this is gonna make things a bit interesting. So, if you remember from the last video, I mentioned the with. And with, we could say target, because that is the variable. And this is gonna pick the Bob. And we're gonna say name equals new name. Now, I'm gonna save you some trouble. Don't do this, because guess what? This variable is a temper. It's just there. It's not in. If you remember from the last video, the with, we're inside of the Bob now. We're inside this target instance. It doesn't have this variable inside the target instance. And so what do we need to do? We can say other, right? But I already explained other, like these variables, when you have a var there, it means that it is not, it's just temporarily, and it can't transfer over. It only runs in that object. What do we do now? How do we set the name to that? Well, scripts are really useful for this part. You're just going to take argument 0, and you can do this, it's legal, and you're going to paste it in there. Because this is all running in, because this is all running in the script, it's kind of like a giant, it's like a container pretty much. Like, and these variables here are just, they're just floating around this container, and they can be pulled at any time, anywhere, any object that's being called in this code here in the script, if that makes any sense. Kind of like, you know, this could be set anywhere, and if you have multiple like objects created, be like, oh, can use argument 0, because argument 0 in a sense it's kind of global, but only within this environment of this script. It's kind of hard to explain. It's a bit hard to explain, but that's just the way it is. So you can do this, name equals argument 0, and it's always still good to still have this, var, in case so you know like exactly what argument 0 does. Even if you can't put the name here, new name, which would make more sense. So another thing you might notice is that there is no return. That's because we're returning void in a sense. We're just returning nothing. We're just doing this code here. So Jeff Bob. All right. So let's just debug. Click on instances. Raise that up. And let's see, Jeff. Friend's name is Jeff now. See, Jeff. Jefferdy. If you haven't seen that video, it's pretty funny. So I think that pretty much covers it with scripts. They're not very complicated, but they are very powerful. And if you can master the script, like, using scripts in your game, like the more scripts you use in your game, the easier it's going to be to build your game. And I will be making a video, like I said many times before, I think, where we're just going to go through a framework of building a game. Like, more like my framework. It's going to be more of a standard, like, kind of tutorial, follow along and do what I do. But I think I should really be showing how, try and get you to understand how I do it and how I process this stuff. So anyway, that is all for scripts today. It is a 20-minute video, pretty much. I know, like, I can't make these videos short because I still have to go in depth with these things. But I hope someone will appreciate the amount of time I put into these videos, and I hope someone gets something out of this, because that's all in the end I want. I want people to understand how to make games in GameMaker, but usually if you understand how to make a game, make it anywhere. So anyway, as always, you guys, like, subscribe, comment below on this video, and please follow us on social media. We got the links down in the description. We got Patreon. It'll help me keep making these videos. And as always, stay frosty.